The very first verse, it says, Christ calls attention and says, "But I say to you here, listen." If you're a person who is not good at instructions, you don't have a good ear, you don't listen well, then you're unable to follow the basic principles. Very simple. The Lord is about to give a universal message to all people, not just to us, to all people, saying, "Hear and listen." So we're going to look at three virtues which is important in our Christian life that we will learn from today's gospel reading. The first is, which is the most difficult, is to love your enemies. And so you will be the sons of the Most High God. The second is, you have to be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. And the third is to give, and you will be given. Love your enemies. The very first verse, love your enemies and do good to those who hate you. It depends on who our enemy is. Who is our enemy? If it's your brothers or sisters or the people around you or your family or friends that hurt you, then they're not our enemies, because they have the image of Christ inside of them. They can't be our enemies. It's a very difficult verse. Love your enemies and do good to those who hate and despise you. Not easy. I'm sure every one of us has gone through this, where people despise you, people hate you, people criticize you, people do a lot of evil to you, and are still might be doing, either at home or at work, or neighbors or relatives or parents or siblings. Not easy to love someone that you hate. There's a lot of abuse in our lives, in our homes sometimes, at work. People just hate you because you look different. Or people hate you because you're not like them. You don't have the same religion, the same color, the same race. They just hate you because of who you are. Or maybe they hate you because you're better than them. Or they envy you because you're better than them. It's part of human life. A lot of criticism. People criticize you for no reason. You're not doing anything bad, but they still criticize you. Today is the feast of the great Saint Moses. And you know what evil he has done to others. He was a thief. He was the master of thieves. He robbed, he killed, he destroyed homes. He did every imaginable evil sin that you can think of. What about all these people that he did these things to? How can they love him back? Not easy. And what about all the martyrs in Egypt and in Libya? Of course, they're in paradise now, but what about their families? How do they feel with those who done these evil acts? If they meet them, how would they react? But as Christians, each one of us follows the guidelines and the principles that Christ has given us, is to forgive. Not easy, I know. Not easy at all to forgive. Because if you don't forgive, you're the one who is being in pain, who will get physically sick. Not the other person. He doesn't care. But you're the one who will be in hurt. But if we listen to what God has told us to forgive and to love those who have hurt us, this is the amazing thing. See, it's okay to love friends because they will love you back. But to love our enemies is something divine, and it can only be done by us Christians. No other religion in the world has divine commandments, and no other religion or no other people in the world can obey this commandment except us Christians. Because as Christians, we get our strength and we get our love from God, because God is what? God is love. And God, when He created us through love, the basis of everything. And of course, He teaches us to love through His great example. When He was on the cross, we all know what He said and what happened. He can see those who crucified Him in front of Him down the cross. All the Pharisees and scribes and Jews who hated Him, and the Romans who were making mockery of Him. And what does He say? He looks up to heaven and says, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. You're going to say, but He's God. He can forgive. Sure. But why don't we learn from Him? Forgive. No matter what anyone does to you, let go. Forgive. A lot of homes that are breaking away right now, a lot of divorces. We see this throughout the years. It's getting even worse now. Why marry in the beginning if you're going to divorce? It's better to stay like me. But not everyone can do that. It's a grace from God. But our Lord gave an excuse, saying they do not understand what they are doing. So the first thing, in order to love your enemies and do not hate your enemies, is to give excuses to others. This is how I work in life. If someone says something, or someone hurt me, or someone did anything to me, I always give an excuse to that person. So maybe he had a bad day, he woke up on the wrong side of bed. Maybe this person is unstable psychologically, he's not taking his medication, there's something wrong with him, we don't know what it is. Maybe the person had a bad upbringing from home, he was abused when he was a child, we don't know. Most of the cases, there's a lot of doctors here, psychiatrists who know this. Most of the problems in our adult life is usually in our upbringing. This is why be careful of what you do at home in front of your children, because they can get affected. And sometimes it's the nature of the person or the character of a person that makes him do these things, because he's not doing it to you only, he does it to everyone else. So don't take things personally, and give always excuses to others, and thus you will be comforted. Okay? If only we can, in the same way as our Lord did, give excuses for those who offend us, and say, Lord, they do not understand what they are doing. Anyone that's doing this to you, say the same words. See, you don't understand what you are doing. You don't understand what you are saying. And you'll comfort the person in front of you. Another good example is Saint Stephen the Archdeacon, the very first amazing martyr in Christian. When he was being persecuted and stoned by the Jews, he did not ask for revenge, which most people do. I have to take back what this person has said to me, or take back what this person has done to me. This is what we go through all the time, revenge. But Saint Stephen looked up towards heaven and prayed for them, asking the Lord not to hold this sin against them. And so it was appropriate that the first Christian martyr, who was an example for all the martyrs who followed him, was not only a preacher of the Lord's suffering, but also was imitating his wonderful example of loving and forgiving. So the second way, in order for you to love your enemies, is don't hold a sin against them. Do not hold the grudges against anyone. Forgive. Forgiveness is number one. Again, it's not easy, but forgiveness is number one. There's a nice story of a father who, his son hated his father and couldn't live anymore in the home, so one day he decided to run away because his father was abusing him. And so the father looked everywhere for him, he couldn't find him, and he was very upset. And he asked God to forgive him and he went to the newspaper and wrote this article, "Dear son, forgive me, for I have sinned against you. All the sins that I have done, all the abuses that I've done, please forgive me. Come back home and I will not do any of this anymore. And I am a changed person. And if you forgive me, then come to the park and meet me, and then I know that you have forgiven me." So he went to the closest park near his house, and he found over 300 youth or children coming asking for forgiveness. They thought not one of them was his son, but others needed forgiveness, and this was an amazing event. The other point is, or the other virtue is, that the Lord taught us is to have compassion and to be merciful. The divine virtue is very pleasing to God because by being merciful, we are imitating our Lord Jesus Christ, who said, "Be merciful as your Father in heaven is merciful." See, no one in this world can be as merciful as God the Father is. And the practice of mercy has two characteristics, which the Lord summarizes in verse 37, which says, "Forgive, and you shall be" what? Forgiven. "Give, and it shall be given to you." The golden rule. Whatever you do to others, it will be done to you. And we know of the enjoyment of the giving. The Lord said it's better to give than to what? Than to receive. That's right. And a few weeks ago, we had the feast of Saint Abraham of Fayoum, and we know what he did there. He gave everything. The Bishop, Diocese of Fayoum, any donations that came to him, he gave it out. Any furniture that came to the church, he gave it out. And of course, the board of committee in the church had an issue with that, but he didn't really care. Whatever came to him, he gave out. And of course, the third virtue which relates to this is the virtue of almsgiving. The two kinds of almsgiving is giving and forgiving. Learn this. Giving and forgiving. And these two work like the two wings of prayer. Now we know that a bird cannot fly with one wing. They have to use two wings. And thus we have to have two virtues, giving and forgiving. Forgiving those who offend us and giving to those who are in need. If you live by these two virtues, you will win heaven. And this is the third way to love your enemies, is by giving. Giving to those who are in need. Trust God and He will repay you manyfold. Give generously to the poor with a happy heart, and they will pray for you. For the same measure that you use, it will be measured back to you. So in conclusion, the three virtues we said are love your enemies, be merciful to others, and give to others. And the three ways to love your enemies is to give excuses to them, not excuses to yourself, but to them. And the second is forgiveness, and the third is to live a life of giving. May the Lord help you and bless you. If you have a chance to reread the passage today, it's beautiful. Contemplate on it. Luke 6, verse 27 to verse 38. Now there is a heat wave today for the elderly. Please be careful when you're going home. If you don't have air conditioning in your house, come and stay here in church. We have air conditioning. So please be careful today. Glory be to God forever and ever.